I have been playing handheld games for about as long as I have had sentience. I went from the GBA SP to the DS to the 3DS and eventually the Switch. And for the last many years, for like all of my 20s, my main consoles have been the 3DS, and I specifically have stuck with the new standard size, not the new XL, but the new standard size, which you can only get in like rare packages in America. Love that thing. That's been one of my main boys, especially recently, especially since 2020. The Lite has become my primary handheld Switch, though I do use my normal Switch. And out of the blue comes a contender. I have been playing this shadowy PlayStation Vita for the whole summer, and pretty much since the minute I got it out of the box, I have been hooked on this thing. I am a huge Vita supporter, Vita Island, hashtag bring back Vita. I love this object, and having spent like a month and a half with it, I would like to share my first impressions on the console itself and the games. So, the story here doesn't fully fit into this video. I'm working on a proper full Sony video about how I started buying PlayStation consoles back in October of last year, even though I've been a Nintendo person my whole life, with the exception of one Xbox 360. That was, I don't know, just kind of a moment. But the thing that made me want to buy a Vita was this gigantic object. This is the IA VT Colorful Crystal Box. I saw it at my local game store and my resale store stuff, and I said, is that Ia the Vocaloid? Is that Ia from Vocaloid, the one who sings all the songs I love? I saw this object and I'm like, what the fuck is that? What is this? Who is she? And I looked into it, and Ia in 2015 got her own rhythm game, just like Miku used to do, like the Project Diva series, but just for Ia. And inside this colorful collection is the actual box I'm likely to keep, because the crystal box is really big and I have to move around. All of this stuff, well, not the screen protector, not the extra screen protector, but there's like stickers and keychains and all kinds of decals and a cleaning cloth, which we will get back to the topic of later. And basically I was able to buy a Vita and kit it out with its own little unique Ia design. So the front isn't very much, but I did pick out this 2000 model with black and magenta, which is just my favorite. Oh my god, this is one of my favorite visuals on any console I own. Magenta and black, hard to see colors with my camera and my lighting, sorry. But on the back I've got the Ia decals. They're very subtle, maybe you can't tell. We got a keychain dangling, Ia dog tag, I don't know. And there's the soft carrying case as well. So this is all a very stylistically cohesive little device. And once I saw the vision for this, I was like, I would really like to make that happen. that would make me very happy. So the Ia Vita has been born, and I copped it up really quickly once I saw a good little magenta pink black 2000 model that I wanted to buy. And holy crap, it's been fun on every level. But before I talk about the games, of which Ia is still part of the conversation, just the console itself, what do I think? So, if you've never held a Vita, I don't know how it compares to a PSP besides the fact that it's slimmer, but it's bigger than, it's wider than a good number of DS's, I don't think it's wider than an XL, but it's certainly a lot smaller than a Switch. And the main point of comparison I tend to make is between the Lite and the Vita, because I love the Lite. The Lite was my number one design for a console before now, because I think it just looks so pretty with the colors and like the pure white, the little clickies and everything like that. But a big reason that the Vita has been kind of taking over as my new favorite form factor is just because the Vita feels a lot more solid than the Lite. As you remember with like the main Switch compared to the Switch 2, like the Switch can be a little bit wide and kind of just like, I don't know, a little bit too light. Kind of feels like it's gonna break in your hands. And as much as I love the Lite, it definitely feels a little bit cheap sometimes. Like the core where the machine is in the middle has a weight to it, but the rest of it just feels a little bit like light plastic. And worst of all is the clicky buttons. You know, they will go clicky clicky and everything, but they just feel a little bit cheap, and especially I damaged this one a little bit on the shoulder, which I don't like. And, you know, I like the D-pad and how it's fully connected and everything, but it's a little bit gummy. And, you know, the sticks are fine, they feel good, but they're nothing, like, incredible. So I find going head-to-head with the Vita, I vastly prefer how the Vita has very firm, very clicky buttons. Overall, a much more firm metal feeling. It doesn't feel like it's going to snap in half on me. I think that the analog sticks are the best thing ever, and I love touching them. They're like my favorite part of the design. The analog sticks feel so freaking good. However, on the 2000 model, I find that these admittedly very stylish clear bumpers that are black on the top, you know, it's got black and magenta here, but then clear there. They're cool, but they also feel a little bit cheapsy. Maybe it's just my secondhand one, but when I push them, I'm like, I don't want to push you too hard. Now this is a resale copy, and it's got some discoloring on the side that you definitely can't see because my camera is the one with discoloring, but you know, it's a little bit scratched up on the back because this is supposed to be some kind of a touchscreen. I haven't played a game that uses the back touchscreen, but all things considered, getting this for less than 20,000 yen, pretty good condition, and I have not had any issues. Like, I don't notice the discoloring much. But if you want to know one thing I do notice, that you might be noticing, is that the PS Vita has Wii U illness. Like, let me grab my gamepad. I cleaned my gamepad and got the dust off of it just a couple days ago. Look how gross it already is. If you've never seen how gross a gamepad can get, you have to take a look at this. I just cleaned this thing, and it's already starting to get dust, and it is somehow covered in fingerprints, to say nothing of how scratched up and just like perpetually dusty the actual screen is. The Vita, yeah, it's a good thing I got this commemorative little Ia handkerchief, because I use this thing to clean my console literally 1 to 3 times per day if I'm playing it. This thing gets so gross so fast, and I never noticed that with the Switch, I never noticed that with the 3DS, but I gave this a solid cleaning before this video, and just from like unlocking it and touching a game, it's already covered in fingerprints, and there's still some dust I didn't get out on the buttons. So that is my biggest complaint with the Vita, physically, is that it has Wii U illness, and it just gets so dusty and so fingerprinty the second you leave it alone. So to touch on the other negative that I have, before I don't really have too many more negatives left for the console, the situation with the memory cards still really sucks. They're not as expensive as they were back during like the big fiasco when it came out. I got one for like 32 gigabytes for 3,000 yen, which to me feels like 30 bucks basically, but with conversion rates would be a little bit cheaper these days. And I think that's going to serve all of my purposes for the digital games, which is another topic I'll hit later. But the other annoying thing about it, besides having to drop that money, is that the game console wants to save all of your game data and your memories and like save files to the SD card. And not even just that, like it wants to save entire like play profiles to the SD card. So if you go from using the on console like 2 gigabytes or whatever that they have, or if it's even that, it might just be 1 gigabyte. I used that for the first 2 weeks before I got my special PS Vita proprietary SD card. I should have mentioned that. Yeah, it uses proprietary SD cards. I played a little bit, and then I popped in my new proprietary SD card for, you know, the rest of my life, and I didn't have any of my save data, which pissed me off. And there is a in-console, like in-house way to transfer your save data, but it sucks. I had to, I think, run a cable to my computer and like USB the console in and then connect over Wi-Fi, or I don't even remember what I did, but I solved it, but I had to manually take all of the save data that I wanted from the Vita and put it on the computer and then put it back on the Vita once I swapped SD cards, which is just really stupid and annoying. But to make matters worse, every one of those little SD card profiles in there is linked to just one PlayStation Network account, which means even though a benefit of the Vita unjailbroken is that it isn't region locked, if you want to buy stuff from a different region, For example, if you want to buy any of these Japanese games I have here that probably didn't even get localized, you have to go through the hoops of maybe having one proprietary SD card for your American games and one proprietary SD card for your Japanese games, which is so dumb. Like, the things kind of compound when you get there. I think I am going to be more than happy going forward because physical games are not region locked. Like, everything I just described is a digital thing. So if I wanted to get on the digital storefront, I would need another SD card. But because in my case, I only really want Axiom Verge, and you can still get that physical secondhand, I think I'm just going to buy a physical Axiom Verge and put it in. Because this baby is region free for the most part, and it has a decent selection of indie games, which is a really, really big strength. But before I get into the specifics of what games are involved, one last positive about the console itself is the screen is by far my favorite screen of any handheld I've ever had. I don't think it's like HD or anything, but oh, this looks worse now. I almost had it looking professional for one moment. Well, we're keeping it here for a minute. But the screen is just so nice. And to do a direct comparison of just what I think is nice about the compact kind of look versus the Switch Lite's slightly bigger look, I will bring up Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which is just the best looking game on this thing. The killer apps I've had so far are Iya and Bloodstained. Look at Curse of the Moon on Switch Lite. I think it looks okay, right? Looks alright. Look at Curse of the Moon on the Vita. It looks so much better, right? Am I crazy? I know it's a little bit hard to see, but I just think that everything looks so much snappier on the screen, especially pixel games. Like, it's just a little bit more bloated, a little bit wider. I might just be getting biased because the color and like the style of Pitch Black is so good with this model, and maybe this is completely personal, but like, let me look at the menu for a second. So you got the menu, right? You got all the menu and the details. You open up the menu on Switch. It's just bigger and it's more bloated. It's just uglier. I don't know. I personally think that the Vita screen looks so much nicer and more condensed than the Switch screen. And I think that's one of the most unprofessional ways I could have possibly done a head-to-head comparison. But that's what I did. So while we're on the topic of games and I have the console on, the UI is really nice. I think the UI is great. You can set a custom wallpaper, which to me brings to mind like unofficial emulators and like emulator consoles, but it is ultimately the ultimate luxury. And then, yeah, the game has its own little splash screen, if it has one. Everything pops up in bubbles, which is really cute and charming. I have no issues with that. This is my current library. It's just about all rhythm games. You'll see the physical ones there. But I have Symphony of the Night, which you, now that I think about it, definitely can't fucking see. But yes, I have Symphony of the Night. So before I get into stuff that's like made for Vita, I have to say, I am really impressed by the eShop, and I'm very impressed by the decision to keep it running and not delist it all these years, because you can get backwards stuff where it's like the PSP, PS3 version of a PS1 game's digital port or whatever, which I think is what maybe that Soten is. Or maybe I'm just buying emulated ROMs of PS1 games, but they're so cheap and there's so many of them. And it's really, really nice for filling in holes if you have a bit of a physical collection, but you don't want to go all the way to get some of these games. Like, I found out I can get Castlevania Chronicles on here, which rips because it's only like 700 yen or whatever digitally, but it's like 30,000 yen or $300 in, you know, if you're being paid in yen, but you grew up in America, which is a specific comparison. It's a lot of damn money to buy it physical, and I figured I would pretty much never play the game at that rate, but it has a lot. However, some of the things are getting delisted, like the Crash series is getting delisted. Like, there are some holes. There's some indie games that aren't on there, which used to be there, so it's a little bit buyer beware, but by and large, I think the digital shop is really good. And this is kind of the most, like, controversial. I mean, it's already a very personalized video, but the most personal thing is that most people in 2025 would tell you, just hack your PS Vita, just jailbreak it, just, like, get whatever you can get and dump it on there. And it's a very good emulating machine. but I have been doing it like by the books, exclusively stuff that I can run with it vanilla, and I'm still really happy because the Switch has a bazillion zillion games, but even though there was a time where the vast library was one of the best parts of the 3DS, I will tell you right now, I have been playing this thing for like 5 years constantly with just a couple good games like Animal Crossing, Planet Robobot. This was a huge addition, but getting a Miku game on there was a giant win for me. I've got a couple eShop funky guys, like, Super Metroid is good, and I play that sometimes, but Kirby Classics, 3D Adventure, this is such a good product. I have been playing my 3DS for years and years and years, mainly on a very small handset, a very small handful of just games that I like, and because of that, it has a lot of character, and I associate those games with it. And again, this is like alarms going off, extremely personal feeling, not for everybody. This game, this console doesn't have as much stuff as the Switch. That's like extremely obvious, but if it has what you like, it's really easy to make a little library with a lot of life, and that is what's been doing it for me. My 3DS has a very small collection of nice, comfy games that make me happy, and I love playing them on that tiny screen with those really firm, very solid buttons. The Vita is a really nice screen for lots and lots of different niche games, depending on what you're into. And for me, that's been a couple indie games and emulated games that I have never had on a console before, and rhythm games. The big thing that I've been noticing about the Vita with games is that it is a niche console. The most like mainstream stuff that everybody would buy is like Gravity Rush, which is a cool cinematic Sony game, and probably anybody could get into Gravity Rush. But then there's portion stuff of cinematic AAA action games like Uncharted and God of War. Like sure, there's that for mainstream stuff, but the most popular PS Vita game is like Persona 4 Golden, which, if you're watching this video, is pretty mainstream to you, but in the scheme of things is pretty niche, so it's a very niche console. You're not going to pick up like a 3D platformer and a Pokemon and call it a day. You have to have a specific reason if you're going to buy this. I have looked at the Vita selection in a bunch of stores for secondhand resale games, and it is always an ocean of anime boys who I've never seen before in this country, in Japan. Like, so much of the library is visual novels or RPGs. And then after that, there are other niche things like tactics games, and I have been finding a lot of rhythm games. And if a rhythm game is enough to sell you on a console, then you might really like the PS Vita. That's been my experience. This is my killer app. It's a niche 3,000 yen Vocaloid rhythm game, and it makes me happy. This has been selling me. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon has been her right-hand man, and I've been loving it. But if that's not enough to sell you, I don't think it's a very safe purchase because, boy, I go to those secondhand Vita selections and I don't see many things that are easy to get into. It's like, oh, if I had a friend that loved visual novels and dating sims, maybe I would know how to make sense of this, but it's basically an ocean of niche, and I don't have anybody to guide me. So you have to have your niche. You have to have your niche on the console. But I mean, speaking of my niche, you can get like Guacamelee, Axiom Verge, Time Spinners, Iconoclast, Shovel Knight. There's a lot of good mid-2010s indie classics on here, which, again, like that can be enough to sell the console for some people if that's your niche. And I think that's really fun. If it's for you, it's for you, but it's definitely not for everybody, is it? Moving on to the final point I would like to make. Have you ever seen a PS Vita case in the wild? Like, maybe you haven't, I don't know, depends who you are. They're so fucking funny. They're so small. They're so small. This is a Vita case against a 3DS case. Look how small it is. It's like a little bit taller, but look how much thinner it is. It's so fucking thin. Here is PS Vita against PSP. It's so small! It's so small! It's so funny! Like, what is this? What was the vision for this? I can't get over how thin it is and how light it is. They have customized spines, which is very nice. Here it is against the Switch, kind of the main comparison you would make. They're so funny. They're so small. They're so fucking little. They're a little bit thicker than Switch. I do contend that like Switch is probably my favorite case size ever. It's really, really nice. But oh my god, just look how funny and little it is. I think this is the most charming thing ever. I thought it was weird at first because I kind of prefer PSP. I mean, for numerous reasons, but this is my first ever PSP game. It's nice. It's a bit chunkier than Switch, but it has a similar vibe and it has custom cases, which goes a long way. And also, like, holy shit, take a look at what's like, this stuff is just so cute. There's just so much more detail back then. The Vita is more like the 3DS, where there's a little bit of like insert guides and stuff like that, but just so much less charm than the DS PSP generation. Here is Rock Love 3, Mega Man indie EDM album. This is Rock Love 3. I found it at a store. So comparing a CD case to a Vita case, we get... I feel like I'm making it look bigger than it is. Look how small it is. Look how fucking small it is. It's so... Revel in its puniness. Yeah, and then PS Vita versus DS. So little. It's like a tiny book you would buy for like $5. A little tiny romance novel your grandma would read that she bought at Kmart or something like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. So I have had a great time. The rhythm games have done more than enough to give it a core, but the fact that I can buy my old reliable, just like indie games and stuff is really, really nice. Bloodstained was a great cop. I really, really, really enjoy having Curse of the Moon 1 on there. I just think it's nice. Try Shovel Knight, try like a clicky, pixely little thing, but my Vita is my friend. It is definitely one of my favorite handhelds, and I really hope it just holds up, because these games I have, like, so fun. I've just been enjoying them so much already, but now I say goodbye, and I'll see you again. Maybe when I buy, you know, eventually, when I get around to buying a blue PSP. A blue Miku-themed PSP. Maybe when I do that, I'll see you again for another PlayStation handheld review. Yeah, what if I did something like this? What if I went crazy? Look how cute this UMD is! It's the cutest thing I've ever seen! This is so 2000s! Alright,